I think that enablement needs to detach itself from the content making business as quickly as possible. If there's anything I want to learn, I can go into ChatGPT.
Justin Driesse led AI enablement at Slack, Salesforce, and Writer. Now at legal AI company Legora, he says the old playbook is obsolete.
I think my biggest learning from the last 6 months in AI is how labor-intensive learning used to be. What it used to take to enable an entire global sales org on account planning. That's probably another 1 to 2 quarter enablement program that you're going to have to run. But now, like, we launched account planning within 9 business days. There's close to 300 account plans. The agents that we're building are really like meal delivery services, where it's like, okay, all that time that you were going to spend doing all the stuff, spend working out, spend time with your family, do whatever.
How do you think about onboarding and ramping new AEs?
Think about it like this. As an enablement leader, if your onboarding program is just okay, think about all the knowledge gaps that people come out of your onboarding program with, and they just compound over time.
You're in the midst of hyperscale. How do you think about making sure the enablement program sort of keeps up with the company growth curve? So Justin, you spent the last few years enabling AI products, Slack AI at Salesforce, Writer's generative AI platform, and now Legora's legal AI. I'm curious, like, how did you end up specializing in AI enablement? And was that an intentional, or did you sort of just follow the opportunities as they came?
I think a little bit of both. I think it's probably the latter than the former if I'm going to sequence them. But yeah, I think my exposure to AI products started when I was at Slack and I was leading the strategy for all tier 1 product releases, right? And so when Denise Dresser came in as the CEO, immediately she was like, we got to do something big. We got to pull something forward. And so Slack AI was on the roadmap for like a late H1 release. And she just rallied the troops again, like inspirational leader, Denise, she's at OpenAI right now, and like, rallied the troops. And we all just said, okay, let's plug our nose, let's jump in. And we launched Slack AI way ahead of schedule. But it was one of those things where it was the right product at the right time. And, oh my goodness, the appetite for that product when we launched it was just so massive, right? And it coupled so well. And the opportunity Denise saw was like, like there was Salesforce's company kickoff, and Slack, we had our company kickoff. And it was just like, it was the right time to build momentum within our organization and then externally with the market. And so, we launched that product. It was really successful up front. But then, interestingly enough, as I was doing my research for Slack AI, one of the early partners of Slack AI was Writer. And it was one of those things where as I looked through, like, I believe there was five companies that were going to partner with Slack AI. They all made sense, and I knew every name but Writer. And I was like, "What's like?" Even the name. I was like, "Writer." I was like, "What is that?" Right? And so I looked into it. And I was like, we were talking about this before the recording started, and it was like what they were doing was so interesting, and it was so differentiated. And so like I loved working at Slack. I mean, like talk about like the cool, like again, like I joined Slack after joining another acquisition, and as the head of enablement there, his name's Bradford, just like the best guy in all of enablement. He's recruiting me, and he's like, "Hey, like I have this role and leading the product, the strategy for product enablement." I was like, "Hey, I just did an acquisition with Twitch and Amazon. Like, I'm not trying to go on that ride again, brother. Like that was, there was some turbulence there." And he's like, "Okay, like if you can turn down the chance to own the strategy for like the most iconic product in like the history of enterprise SaaS, you're a better man than I." And I was just like, oh, all right, let's do this.
That's tough.
So, all right. It was like the best salesmanship, right? So I go in, this is a totally different game. Like, in Writer, they build their own models. They have multiple like agent buildings. By the time I departed, they had multiple agent building solutions. And it was like, what? Like, this is a totally different game. Like, this is going to take my career in a totally different direction and go all in. So, it was my first startup was going to Writer. And I couldn't imagine both a better experience of working there and then just like a more robust education on like, as part of my interview process, like, again, there was such a high bar for talent at Writer where it was like I had to give because again, my role there was technical and product enablement. It was like I had to go in and give a mock training on retrieval augmented generation, fine tuning, and I forget there was like a third leg to that stool, but I just remember looking at the prompt. And again, like when you get these assignment prompts after a while in enablement, they're all kind of similar. I looked at the one for Writer and I was like, okay, this is different. I was like, whoa. I need more time on this. I cannot turn this around in 72 hours like I initially said I could. But it all went well. And it was just like, you think about what Writer offered me going from Slack out, which was a good product, but very much a bolt-on feature to like an existing feature set. And then Writer was just, you're going to learn about everything in the multiverse that is AI. I'm so fortunate to have spent that time there. And again, their co-founder is Man Wasim, like just the most generous people, like in terms of like how they treat their employees, how they work with you. And then now, here at Legora, it's like, going from writer into Legora, it's like I think initially like I had a bit of skepticism towards like the industry specific, like, like legal AI thing. But once I met the team and I understood the vision, I was like, oh, this is different again. And so it was like going from whether it was like Slack AI over to Writer, now to Legora. It's just, I think I've had the good fortune of having these opportunities, but then, like anything in life, you got to capitalize on those opportunities.
And so this technology, I mean, is changing so fast. It's hard to keep up with all the different developments in AI, both, that are happening from like the model companies, but then all the different application companies, and then all the companies that you've mentioned, Slack, Writer, Legora are shipping new products all of the time, right? Trying to keep up with this insatiable demand. I mean, it's pretty crazy how much demand there is for all these different AI native products. I'm curious, like, what makes selling an AI native product unique, and then how does that impact like your job as the enabler?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it broke something that needed to be broken, right? Like, I think a lot of enablement teams fall into the trap of content and producing content, right? And I had this conversation earlier this week with a good friend of mine, and it was like, I think that enablement needs to detach itself from the content making business as quickly as possible, right? And so it's like yeah, and if you think about what content is, like you think about enablement teams, they make e-learnings, they make one-sheeters. What they're really trying to do is lower the barrier of entry into a complicated concept that people aren't familiar with. But like that's kind of like before times technology. Or now with AI, like if there's anything I want to learn, like I think my biggest learning from the last 6 months in AI is how labor intensive learning used to be. Like, let's just do a thought exercise here, right? Like to learn something, people used to have to drive to a library, you know, use the
Still
Dewey
blows my
Decimal,
mind. Yeah.
use the Dewey Decimal System, find an encyclopedia, and like think about the hunting and pecking you used to have to do to learn stuff. And then computers came out. It's like, oh, I could do this from the comfort of my home, but you're still largely hunting and pecking, right? I can go into ChatGPT or Claude right now and say, I want to become an expert on this, but I want you to teach it to me like you're an a cappella singer. And like it's gonna do it. Or like explain this to me like it's an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants. It's gonna do it. Like we live in this age where like it's never become easier to like learn about things. And so that's the paradigm shift that enablement has to make. Whereas like you used to have to build e-learnings and all of these, you just have to use all of these mediums to make concepts simpler for people. And now it's like it's totally rewired the game where it's like, I think enablement has to, remove themselves from content and just focus on, a concept that I've come to call like, sales empathy, where it's like, look, it's never been harder to be a salesperson, right? Like the pace of change is never going to slow down. And it's harder now to be a salesperson than it ever is, for whether it's, to your point, product shipping all the time, or like in AI, like disruption is the expectation, right? And I don't think that's ever been the case in any other tech industry where like I expect all of my current solutions to be disrupted by AI repeatedly all the time. And so what AI has allowed us to do with these salespeople is like, yes, like their job is getting harder, but now like the way that I'm building my team at Legora is like our solutions cannot be additive. They have to be distillations of what they do currently, whether that's through agents or automations or like whatever it is. Like we don't have an LMS. I never want to have an LMS. I'm a bit of a enablement tools anarchist, if you will, where I've always felt like less is more, but like it's going to be a cold day when I go and engage and when I watch this is going to get clipped and go viral and I'm going to have like 15
You're
LMS.
going to buy the doc LMS that we're building one day. No, I'm kidding.
Um, but no, it's like I just think like like we've had tremendous breakthroughs with Notion here, right? Like when I came into Legora, there's a huge Notion culture. Like when I tell you the grassroots enablement that existed before I got here was like it was impressive, right? And it was this leading indicator of the care that everyone takes for one another here. We're like again like the culture in Stockholm, the culture in New York, and all of our offices coming together, but it was like what they lacked was that enablement distribution, right? Because I think like not to go too far on this response, but it's like I always look at the role of enablement. Like the analogy I like to use is if you think about like the music industry, like the role of a record label. Like they're not the ones writing the music, they're not in the studio recording it. They are there to make sure that all of their artists on their label are successful. And that's kind of how I treat my stakeholders. I go think of enablement as the record label. And it's like, listen, like I don't want your record to drop at the same time as their record. So I might sequence this and I might say like, hey, can we wait a couple weeks before we do that? Or like, for example, we're going to launch new messaging. How do we know it's successful? Well, the record label is going to track in sense, radio plays, ticket sales, Spotify downloads, all of that stuff. And we'll put that stuff together for you. So like, my friends in product marketing, they say, hey, we have new messaging coming out. And then I come to them and say, okay, here's the distribution plan. And here's how we know it's going to be successful. Here's our gong trackers, like all that stuff. And again, notice that nothing that I've talked about is even adjacent to creating content. It's all about like how do you get information into the hands of the field in the most frictionless way possible. And then to me, the keystone to all that is again this concept of like seller empathy. Like how do you empathize with someone who's trying their best, trying to stay on top of all this stuff? And again, most of these people have families. I have a young family myself, and I get how hard it is to have to work through all this stuff right now.
And so what's an example? I mean, I love what you're talking about here of like, okay, enablement, the old world of enablement was like static content, these courses and LMS systems that no sales rep actually wanted to do. And if they had to do it, they had to just click through it and kind of hate their life, right? Just to kind of check the box, right? And so then what does modern enablement look like? Like what's a real example of how because you still got to teach people things, right?
Yeah.
Especially even now in a world of AI where it's changing so fast. So like what's a program that you've rolled out where you can still teach the AEs, especially about legal tech, which is a really complicated and nuanced field. Like what's a program you sort of roll out that still teaches them, but isn't this old world of static?
Yeah, so like we've had two huge breakthroughs in my time at Legora in account planning and demos, right? And so, and again, the demo ones is interesting because at Writer, I built a program called Demo Domination. Now, initially, it's a mouthful, but initially,
That's a good name.
well, it's memorable, right? But it's when you have to say it over and over again, it becomes like it's a lot of syllables. So, but it was funny was it was the first program I ever put in front of May, right? May Habib. And we like the deck was called like Operation Demo Domination. We're going to teach the field how to dominate their demos. And May's like, Justin, she goes, I love that name so much. She goes, everything is demo dominate. And it just became this like woven into the fabric of the company. Everything was demo domination, right? But like I've evolved it since coming to Legora just with the advancements in agents. And so a program that initially like when I rolled out demo domination, right? The first time I did this way back in 2024, like literally a year and a half ago, not even, it was like a quarter over quarter program where it's like we are going to like, okay, here's the problem that we face. Here's how we make that problem smaller and more manageable for salespeople. We need to organize all the demo prep materials that people have. So using Slack's lists feature. I don't know. It's not like super widely adopted, but as like someone who used to draw a paycheck from Slack, I was super familiar with it. So we basically took all the demo content and put it right in Slack because that's where the team was working, right? Like everyone was working in Slack. The whole company was on Slack. So we put all the demo content organized by use case, organized by vertical into Slack. And then by organizing that, we also taught the team a demo methodology. And so between Q3 and Q4, right, by giving them those assets, we noticed it was like a 33% bump in demo acumen as assessed by their manager. So like not me in enablement cooking the books and trying to like pat myself on the back, but it was like, no, like their manager scored them from Q3 to Q4. And we saw it was like a 31% bump in demo acumen quarter over quarter. And like that's good enablement work right there. Like that's a good program. But like think about that, 2 quarters. 2 quarters in the age of AI is a lifetime, right? And so now using Notion, it's like, we're working on a solution right now where it's like, I don't again, I've become like a Notion AI evangelist. It's just I've yet to come across an agent solution that's this novel where the best way I can break it down for you is your Notion instance becomes your RAG system. Don't worry about RAG pipeline. Don't worry about buying an adjacent solution or anything like that. Like, no, you use Notion. That's your RAG. And then the Notion agent, you just tell it which Notion pages to read and what you want it to do with that information. So like you as an organization are incentivized to have really good Notion hygiene. And then the agent is just as simple as writing a Notion doc. And then again, they live together really, really seamlessly. So now as we're trying to improve the way that we demo here at Legora, it's like, hey, like we have examples of what good demos look like, we have archives of what are the top legal use cases by certain practice areas. And so like the agent is going and spinning up demo scripts using like, okay, who are you talking to? It's going to read the account plan. Who are you working with in the account? What is their role? What are their interests, right? Because what's great about legal is, is selling to like this niche audience of law firms is like LLMs know the legal industry really well. They're not lawyers, but like legal industry is not proprietary information, right? So they understand what a partner versus a managing partner versus a senior associate, what drives them, what their motivations are. So you can get away with a lot in terms of like, look, if we take the account plan, which is all publicly available information, so we're using an agent to build our account plans for us. We're doing hours worth of work and putting together these really robust account plans. Again, all based on like just like research that it would take you hours to do on the internet, pulling it into an account plan and saying, okay, based on what we know about this organization, like what are the use cases that would best fit with what they're trying to accomplish as an organization. And it's like you think about that used to be hours worth of synthesis, and now it's just like two agents working in concert together in the background. And so the before and after is, writer, this was a 2 quarter, call it 4 to 6 month program that yielded a good result. Like we did this in a couple weeks. Right, just by building these two agents. And it's like now it's like every rep, not only are they getting like, so we launched account planning, and within call it 9 business days, there's close to 300 account plans because the reps it went like viral. And so you think about that. Think about what it used to take to enable an entire global sales org on account planning. That's probably another 1 to 2 quarter enablement program that you're going to have to run. But now, like to what you asked earlier, it's like, how do you use agents? It's not additive, it's distillation. It's how do we distill an existing process? Like nobody in a sales org would look at you and say account planning is a waste of time. No one would look at you and say like, oh, like I don't want to do account planning. I don't need it. It's a time thing. It's how much time do you have in the day and how do you allocate your time? And so we take these processes that are critical to running a good sales cycle, and we find agents to accelerate the work that people were doing. And so then, like the analogy I like to use for this is like you think about, we talked about in the before times what it used to take to go to the library and learn something. Think about if I said, you got to eat clean. Just list out, I got to get in the car. I got to go to the grocery store. I got to buy the food. Before I do that, I got to find recipes. I got to cook. I got to clean. I got to do all this stuff. The agents that we're building are really like meal delivery services where it's like, okay, all that time that you were going to spend doing all the stuff, spend working out, spend time with your family, do whatever. And it's like, how do you find areas like that where you can compress elite sales execution into an agent? And then just you hand that to your team and then they start using it. And so like I mentioned with the account planning, like that's how we've gotten, again, like I would call this viral adoption of the agent inside of 2 weeks.
And is the workflow for that like the AE just goes into Notion and starts prompting and says, "Hey, I need an account plan for Cooley or whatever law firm that they're selling to," and then it spits it out, or is the enablement team sort of delivering, like looking at calendars and delivering account plans automatically? Like, what does it feel like to be an AE who's sort of using these tools?
So the theme for our kickoff this year was yes, chef. Right. The idea was like, hey, what got us here is not what's going to get us here. And the delta is like, we work our tails off here at Legora, and like I'm so proud of the grit and determination on this team. But the unlock isn't more grit and determination. The unlock is discipline and productivity and focusing on the things that matter. So in light of kickoff, if you're a rep, what you do is, you go into Notion, you add the Notion person. Like, I don't know if you know how like Notion agents work. You add the personality. So again, the prompt, it's 5 prompts chained together and they all feed on one another. Right. And then you open the Notion agent and you use yes, chef. You just type in yes, chef. And then what it does is it reads the title of the account plan. And then it goes again. It's all like it's all public facing information that like a rep would be doing researching on their own and compiling into an account plan on their own. But it just yes, chef. The agent has all of the prompts, and I'd say what's more important isn't it's what you're telling it to do, but it's also what you're telling it not to do, because the early beta tests of the agent where it was coming back with a lot of a lot of wheat and chaff, right? And so we had to separate the wheat from the chaff. So we've been really specific on what we wanted to do, and now what you get is like this very repeatable, like robust account plan structure. Again, the prompt, I'm sorry, is proprietary. I'm not going to be sharing the prompt, but I used Notion to help me write the prompt. It wasn't me sitting there like just like pen and paper scratching it all out. It was me going back and forth with the agent saying like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. Oh, I want to also include this. And now it's like you have that account planning agent working hand in hand with the demo prep agent. And so like all of this is coming together in this one account plan.
I totally get how this is like helping accelerate sales once the sellers are sort of already onboarded, working with their customers, right, or prospective customers. But how do you think about like onboarding and ramping new AEs, especially because legal tech is complicated? I mean, both my parents are actually lawyers. They both do completely different types of law. There's so many nuances of law in general, right? It's not just one thing. And so, how do you think about teaching an AE about the legal industry? How do you weave that into onboarding? Because there is so much nuance, and I assume if an AE just gets on a call and starts talking about, I don't know, litigation law or something to an M&A lawyer, they're like, this doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, how do you sort of think about teaching an AE about law? Or maybe you're just hiring AEs who already know about law and that's like a prerequisite. How do you think about kind of that dynamic?
Yeah, I think, the existing knowledge of legal tech varies like person to person that we hire here. But one of the ways that we're, in not to come back to the well on this one, but it's like, you know, well, one thing is like, I'm very clear, and the all the as I'm building my team out, it's like onboarding will have an outsized impact on what enablement means for Legora this year. Like the growth goals that we have, it's like if we're doing our job well, ramp is very compressed, and that should be the focus of everyone. So like, I think you and I chatted about this, where it was like as I built my team here, it's like I made the conscious decision not to hire one person to focus on onboarding because I was like, that's going to be all of our job. Like my team, it's like it's not going to be like Eric's job and like, hey, I have a new concept that's got to go into onboarding, like just toss it over the fence to Eric and let him figure it out. It's like, no, we're all in this. Like we're all gonna have skin in the game. And like as we own the different pieces of the enablement roadmap here, it's like everyone's accountable for making sure that their piece of the roadmap is accurately represented in onboarding. We have to take this very seriously. So, I'd say our onboarding program it's really, in my opinion, it's really sophisticated because it has to be, and that's where we're spending a lot of our calories as an enablement team. Because it's like, I mean, I think it's always been the case. In any sales organization, the greatest opportunity for you to have, um, enablement's call it richest window for impact on a salesperson is when you onboard them, when you new hire them. But it's like I think a lot of times onboarding become like it's not sexy. It's not generally what gets people promoted. And they're like, onboarding is not the road to VP level promotion in enablement. It's just not. But it's like I think in the era of AI, where it's like we're moving so fast, and it's like if whatever knowledge gaps they leave their first ramp period with, it's like those just, in my opinion, they just compound over time. And it's just like, what they don't know, or if you have stale bad information in your onboarding that then you have to like take out of their heads. It's like you think about it, and it's like, there's so many things that people have to keep up with on a regular basis at these hyperscale AI companies that like, I mean, like, there's no room for knowledge gap. There's no room for misinformation. Like to get people to unlearn things, it's like, we just got to focus on what's ahead of us. So to me, onboarding it's critical. It's like, we have to come out, like we have, multi-week certification systems. We're very, very dialed on like, what are the metrics that we're looking at? What does good look like? Where are areas where our managers should be leaning in? And, that's the way that I position our onboarding program to our leaders is like, there's only so much time you can spend with a new hire. So the purpose of onboarding is to give you high fidelity signal on like where are they strong and where are they soft and where should you prioritize your time. And so that's why as we have these certifications and these rep metrics in place, it's really to let leaders know like, okay, they're good on A, B, and C, but like they really need work on D. So in my one-on-one with them, let me prioritize that. And it's, you asked about like, how do we make the experience better for sellers? But it's also like, how do you make the experience better for managers, right? Like, how can we, like, just this morning, my first hire, he's doing a great job. His name's Jeff. And like, we just proposed a program around, pipe hygiene, right? And like pipe hygiene is not sexy, but listen, like there's ways to positively encourage things that like a manager then doesn't have to coach against. There's things that like we all know people should be doing it, but again, it just kind of falls by the wayside when you're trying to move as quick as you are as a salesperson selling an AI. So it's like, how does enablement bolster that with a really killer program? And then that's one less thing the manager has to do, so they can focus on other areas.
When you're doing those certification programs, like, is it happening, or are A's just on call with prospects and then you're like listening to them in whatever call recorder you use and then like evaluating it that way? Or are you doing like real role play, or do you use AI role play? Like, what does a certification program sort of look like at Legora?
So I think like throughout the course of my career, I've always seen certification as a bit nuanced concept, right? Where it's like, to me, like you're not certified until I see that you can do this with a customer. Like there's two layers to it, right? So like when anytime I've ever run a certification, it's like there's field readiness, i.e. like this well enough to go get in front of customers. But then there's always that other layer of like, what does it look like when the bullets are flying? What does it look like when you're dealing with a customer who clearly doesn't want to be there with you? Like that's way different than like you preparing something with your manager, and at the end they have 4 canned questions that, guess what? Once they do it once, every rep tells every other rep, here's the 4 questions that you're going to get. And so it's like, to me, there's always two, like, so I treat certification as like it's a lever you should only pull so often, because when I do it, I believe in doing it right. And it's always like a 2-layered approach where it's like, do you have the ability to do it? And then how do you perform with it once you're in front of customers? Because I think too often we fall into the trap of, oh, we did a performative cert, like, at kickoff, right? Like, a lot of people like ask people to come up with like a prepared script or a demo or this or that, but it's like, there's just such a big delta between that and what they do in front of customers. And I think that salespeople, again, back to that concept of seller empathy, it's like, my goal is always to make my enablement programs as like whether you want to call it authentic or organic as possible to like what they do out in the field. So like I'm a big believer in what I call team certifications, where it's like, hey, we're going to go through a training and then the manager is going to bring this deck into their next team call and walk you through like as a team, like let's talk through like 3 or 4 scenarios that are directly related to the content that happened in the training. And it's like, you can tell based on the team's responses, like, are they picking up on like the different ways that we want to approach discovery? Like, are they still falling into the old habits? Right. Because again, like to do the role, it's just like, look, I understand the role of the role play and it's never going to go away. But like, there's a reason why it has the stigma that it has. It's because it's like, again, I don't think it's an organic experience for salespeople.
And I think you capture that at the beginning too. It's like everyone knows how to game a role play, right? But when you get on the call with like a customer who barely wants to talk to you or is kind of a pain, like all of the rules go out the window, and you got to be able to react in real time. Of like that's where real sellers actually thrive.
I've carried this talk track with me across like my last 3 companies, where whenever I teach like demo methodology, it's like, look, you're going to spend days obsessing over this demo. I go, you are just another call on their calendar for that day, right? Like especially if you think about your executive decision maker, it's like, listen, like, and like you don't know what's going on in their world that day. Maybe their kid got suspended from school. Do you honestly think, how much do you think they care about your demo? If their kid just got suspended from school, or like all these crazy things that life could throw at them. And it's like, as much as there's seller empathy, I try to teach like prospect empathy and like listen, like, and like the advice I give them, I gave someone this advice a couple hours ago. It's like, you want to use pitches and demos to evangelize the person on the other side of the conversation. And so we always want to show up and like wow people. But like the analogy I like to use is like, think about like for you to really buy someone a gift that wows them, you got to know a lot about them, right? Like for them to really like rave about like, oh my God, like I can't believe you got this. It's so thoughtful. Like you got to know a lot about them. Discovery. What are they into? What's their AI acumen? Like, 'cause, we want to come guns blazing with this incredible like AI legal tech, but like at the same time, it's like, where are they? Do they actually understand how good this is? Or are they, if you come in way over their head, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, like you just show me some cool AI, as opposed to like, no, like tell them like this is the thing that solves the use case that is keeping you from hitting your growth goals in 2025. Like think about that prospect you demoed that to. Those are 2 totally different conversations they're having going back into their company. Like, hey, I just did a demo with Manny, and like, guys, he can literally solve the M&A disputes use case. Like we got to set up you got to see this. I'm going to set up another call with him, as opposed to like spray and pray demo, like, like showing them everything but the kitchen sink. Like meet the customer, the prospect where they are. And then you're far more likely to get them to like promote you internally, which to me is like the ultimate goal of that situation.
That's the classic demo mistake. I mean, I made that demoing doc, right? You just want to show off all your features, look how cool I am, as opposed to making it about the person you're talking to on the other side, understanding their needs, and then mapping your solution back to whatever problem they're trying to solve. Which I still got to get better at as I demo folks. Yeah,
it's only that's what I tell Brett. Like you're only human. Like I give you this advice not because I'm like, look, I'm an enablement. I'm not on the phone calling customers every day. I'm certainly not better than you, but like it's human as you learn this stuff and you're leaning in and you think this is so cool and you're so bought in on this company, right? Like, but like you lose the woods from the trees, and you always just cut. Your first principle should always be like, how do I meet this person where they're at? And then the goal again, like the goal of any sales call is to get the next call. But I say that's 1A. 1B is how do you get this person promoting your company or your solution once they're off this call internally? Because like that is like that's the goal, right?
Well, that's the key to all software, I feel like, because I mean, somebody's going to buy a piece of software like Doc or Lattice, the 2 companies I've worked with, and it's like their job is kind of on the line. Like at Lattice, they were buying performance management software, and it was an HR person, and it's like if that rollout of the performance review went bad, they probably weren't going to have their job anymore. Like it means a lot, right? Like when you're buying a piece of software and you're putting your name on it. So.
Yeah.
All right, switching gears a little bit. Like, how do you think about collaborating across like the revenue team? There's obviously a lot of important relationships, right? The AEs we've talked about a lot, but like, how do you think about collaborating with sales leadership, and then marketing maybe is the other one I'm curious about. I assume you're working with product marketing a lot. How do you think about those important, internal relationships?
Great question. So I think it's 2 different approaches, right? And so when I think about marketing, it's like that leans back into that analogy of like the record label, where like when it's product team, marketing, product marketing, whatever. Like, if you have like an innovation team or anything like that, it's like the work you do with them is very much like, okay, I want to maximize the ROI for you on everything you're doing with the sales team. And a lot of that comes down to, again, the reason why I use the record analogy label, or the record label analogy, is because, again, like you don't want your top 2 artists releasing a record on the same day. Like you will, like they'll both sell well, but they did not sell as well as they could have if you sequenced it in a way that's consumable for your audiences, right? Like I think it's say Metallica and Taylor Swift could release records on the same day, and like probably all things considered, everyone's fine. But like Tate McRae and Taylor Swift, that is the extent of my pop music knowledge. They release records on the same day. Someone's taking a hit. Someone's going down there, right? So as I work with my cross-functional stakeholders, like when I push back, I'm very clear with them up front. I'm like, my goal is twofold. I see myself as like the guardian of, call it, organizational calories. Right. Like, so if we do release things and it's not sequenced well, like, so perfect example, not here at Legora, but at prior companies, like I've seen like product marketing messaging released without like the proper like rollout and implementation to the field. And so like, here's what happens. And it happened, I saw it happen twice. And the second time I could see it happening in real time where it's like, hey, this is great. We love this. This is going to work so easily. We can kind of go light touch on the rollout. Roll it out. Field doesn't really understand it. When they pitch it, are they pitching it with confidence? They're not. What did they all come back and start saying? This doesn't work. We don't understand our customers. And then you spent all the time putting the messaging together, right? The field spent time putting it out there, but then because it gets rejected, because it wasn't integrated well, it's like you then wind up in this cycle of just like wasted organizational calories. I'm like, why didn't the messaging work? It works. I think it's good. I think it's like all like we got to go back. And it's like that's what I think enablement can do a lot to mitigate, which is like, like when someone comes to you, it's like, hey, like we want to release new messaging. It's like, hey, there's 5 selling weeks left in the year. Maybe we wait. Like, man, and it's not because I don't think your messaging is good. It's not because I don't want to support you. It's like I think this is going to result in like additional organizational calories, right? And then like that's where like when I work with my stakeholders, it's like how do we get you the best ROI? So it's like, oh, like okay, like maybe we should wait on doing that, and then when we do it, like hey, like why don't we have the CRO do it? Right, like it did nothing will instill confidence in the field to use the new messaging than seeing the executive level version of this, right? And like I've seen that be really successful when you have what like I think a lot of times we default to like a good rep, but I think getting the CEO or the CRO or someone to do it in a way that is like really really alluring, that buys a lot of that early confidence in the messaging. And so like that's just like one quick anecdote around like the partnership that I give is like let's make sure that we're getting the highest return on your investment for the work that you've done, and then like not only how do we get the highest return, but how do we like keep pushing to make sure that like we're getting eyeballs on it and people are looking at it and viewing it. Like when we launched new messaging here at Legora, like we had like I think roughly we put out a Loom with again our CRO did the messaging for it. He delivered it, and I want to say 94% of the field viewed it within the first 12 hours. Because again, it's like we found the right moment in their schedule where there was not much going on, and it was like here's his version of this new messaging, and like boom, it took off.
It's a great lesson. I was on the other side of that at Lattice. I was in marketing, wanting to do like so much new stuff all the time, new campaign, new thing. And you learn the hard way that like sellers need to focus on selling and they can only digest so much other stuff, whether it's, hey, there's a new marketing event or new messaging is the example you were saying. And yeah, I fell into that trap so many times. And you realize like there's an important pace to, I mean, it's, you can only digest so much as a person, right? And like, yeah. So,
and like, again, it's like, and that's why like, I'm always like, again, you try to be super empathetic with all parties, right? Again, it's just like in the age of AI, it's like you got to be superhuman. You got to lead with empathy. And like, I understand how hard you worked on this, and I know how badly you want this to be successful. Like, I promise you, I'm not resisting this to get in your way. I promise. I found you a better path. It's over this way, right? But then you walk them through it. You go hand in hand to the finish line, and they go, oh, I get it. Okay, yeah, this is exactly what we needed. And then you have that trust with them. And once they see that you've helped them avoid like even if it's a tough conversation initially, once they see that you're on their side and you've helped them avoid the landmine, like then they're your best friend for life.
And so do you just have like a weekly meeting with product marketing as an example where like to get ahead of these things, right? To know that it's coming down the pipe that, hey, marketing wants to roll out new messaging or there's this new campaign. And like, how do you get ahead of these things before it becomes a problem?
I mean, I'm fortunate to have like incredible cross-functional stakeholders here at Legora, from our product and our product marketing and marketing in general too. Like we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of people talent here, right? But yeah, we have a weekly, it's product ops, product marketing, and myself meet every single week, and we stay well ahead of like there's no surprises coming down the pipeline. But it's like even like there's simple stuff. Like I think that we've optimized the process to where in a past life things that would have been a much heavier lift, it's like the team just knows like where to go for product updates and information. And like again, like we've optimized, because I think early on they're like, oh, Justin, your enablement, you should post. And I'm like, if I post everything, it actually dilutes the signal. Like it's actually good for them to see the VP of product popping up in this channel because like they're gonna see his face and know that they should pay attention. And like, hey, if there's a marketing thing, like yeah, like our VP of product marketing should be the one to post this. Whereas if it's just me, it becomes noise to them. Like same thing with like the CRO delivering the pitch. It was like him posting in that channel was like people notice when he posts. So it's like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is him actually doing the pitch. Oh, cool. Let me take a look. And that's how you get that 90+% read rate, if you will, in the first day that we posted the new messaging. So it's all about understanding to, who they are, what their priorities are, and then just like how to like again like I joke I'm like I got more of a marketer in me than I like to lead on like about like how what's the best way to get their attention in this moment based on all the other priorities that they have. But I'm also I like to say that I'm a sucker for structure. So I think it all comes down to like you just got to be really diligent on your roadmaps and like documenting and making thing like everything you do has to be like readily visible and available and like people can always double like I'd say like when I come in to run an enablement org it's like I think people are always like quasi intimidated by the level of documentation. But like once they understand, it's like, look, there is a roadmap there's a roadmap for the quarter and a program guide for everything that we do. And I think initially it's like, wow, this is a lot of slides. But I am here to tell you, Alex, slides save lives. And once people understand just like the roles and responsibilities of the documentation, it's like that's another way, like I mentioned, building trust cross-functionally in your organization. Like that's another great way to do it is just like when we did our kickoff, like I mean, I might have spent a few hours building a program guide for kickoff. Those slides got shown like hundreds of times over the 4 months that we went and planned kickoff. So it's just like something like that is an investment of your time, but it's all about that ROI of like what it's going to get you moving forward.
Let's talk about that sales kickoff. So I think it just happened like a couple weeks ago or last week, and it was like a 3-day event in Stockholm, right? Like maybe we start with why do you even do a sales kickoff? I assume you're taking sellers off the phones. I assume it costs a lot of money to bring everybody together. Like what's the purpose? Why is this such an important initiative for you?
Well, it's a bit ceremonial in a sense where it's like it represents less than 1% of their calendar year if you think about it, right? And so when we were in the early innings of planning kickoff, it happens every year. Everyone hears, oh, the sales team's together in one room, and everyone wants to like get their thing in front of the sales team. But what I remind people is like, okay, this is not the only time you'll have to present to them, right? And it's like I think you have to play a lot of diplomacy checks around like people that want to get things in front of the team, but it's just like, hey, like put it like this. I place a very hard filter on what kickoff is, and so in planning, so I'm gonna get to an answer to your question, but
Yes, keep going.
it's like you just have to be very clear on a couple things, right? Like you need to be very clear on what is the like strategic objective of this event and what are the metrics that this event is driving facing forward for the rest of the year. And so what this event becomes is this is your kickoff for here is what we're doing, here's how we're doing it, here's how we will know if this is successful, right? And so I have in my program guide for kickoff, I was like, this is the bar for talent. Anything that goes in front of the field over these 3 days has to be something that is directly correlated to our strategy to win for this year. It has to be something measurable that we can track to make sure that it's getting adopted over time. And then what we do is we teach them about it, right? In some type of enablement session. We then give them a hands-on workshop where they get to apply it and really chew on it and talk about it with their peers. We certify them on it. And then once they have been taught, they've got a chance to practice, they've been certified, we track that over the next at least 2 quarters to make sure that what we taught them is getting adopted. And so like that's something where your cross-functional it's very easy for them to understand, and it's also easier for them to understand why you're saying no to certain ideas. And it's like it's not that I don't value this, it's not that I don't think it would be a good use of their time. It's like for this week it just doesn't fit the theme. And for this week to work, we really need to be dialed in on like what is the most important thing that the field needs right now.
And what's an example of one of those things where you taught them something, you trained them, and then you're sort of validating it later?
The focus of kickoff again, yes chef was the theme, was like we are gonna get really clear on what our goals are, and again how we're going to achieve. So what are our goals, how are we going to achieve them, and then it was really dialing in on like what is elite execution of our customer journey look like. And again, like this is all documented in Notion. Like again, like Legora is, I could say, wise beyond its years in terms of the company's only existed for I believe less than 2 years or somewhere right around that mark, but like has the hallmarks of a 5-6 year old company. And so we have a sales process, we have all this stuff, but it's like what, we're growing so quickly, and we have so many new folks. Like, let's just get really dialed on like what not everyone knows what to do. What does it look like to do it with elite execution, right? Like, because that's what's going to get us from where we are today to where we want to be at the end of the year. It's all about execution. We have to really focus on execution. And so we spent the first day of kickoff. It was everyone together in one room, and it was the strategy. It was like, and again, it was like revenue keynote, you know, like sessions with our, innovation leaders around like, here's how we're going to leverage this, here's how we're going to do that. And everything opened and closed with, here's how we fit into the strategy, and here's what you should do after this session to work with us, to activate this, to do this, to that. Everything was very forward facing and actionable, right? And then so when you got into the second day, right, this is where we went into like role specific workshops where it's like, okay, everyone's aligned on what the strategy is, right? Now today, if you're in sales, you are going to go through, everyone had 4 workshops that day. And it was like, what parts of the buyer's journey are most critical? And again, like it was leader led, or like, the people that had the best years from like pre and post sales, like who are our star performers and how do we distill their knowledge? And it was leading hands-on workshops where it's not just like one directional, we're teaching at you. It was like, here's a concept. And again, myself and my team, we worked with all of them to build like true hands-on workshops where it's like, as they were like build, like, oh my God, we got to build an hour's worth of PowerPoint slides. I'm like, you really don't. I was like, and I gave them a template where I was like, it should be 10 minutes of teaching, 5 minutes of Q&A, and then 15 minutes of hands-on group work. Do one topic, do another topic, rinse, repeat, your hour's over, right? And so it was like, what are the 4 points of our customer journey that are most critical for sales, for customer success, for what the other parts of the company are? And it was just making sure that the concepts you learned about on Wednesday, you're applying them on Thursday. And then Friday was certification. Friday was, okay, let's, and we used agents to do this. We took the transcripts from all of those workshop sessions and we spun up 3 to 4 scenarios based on, again, like what was covered in those workshops. And the managers would lead their team through a discussion like, okay, we're going to talk about, discovery and qualification. Again, based on what you learned yesterday and based on the real customer anecdotes that people delivered in the room, like, what would you do if you ran into this? What would you do if, discovery and qualification, you run into someone, they're your champion, and you find out they just took a new job? What do you do? Like, and it was all real, real conversations in the room. And so you go from, here's what we're doing as a company, as our strategy, here's how you execute, and here's a chance to practice and get feedback from your team and your manager on the last day.
And so Legora is scaling insanely fast. I mean, I don't know how many people you were when you started and how many are today, but I know it's probably a lot more. And so how do you think about scaling the enablement program over time? Because you're going to have to do this, it's not like a future thing, oh, we're going to scale. It's like you're in the midst of hyperscale. And so like, is it just more of the same, or are you going to like adding new enablement programs in the future? And you've felt scale before, like right at Slack and Salesforce, right? That's a crazy level of scale. So how do you think about like making sure the enablement program sort of keeps up with the company growth curve?
Enablement needs to work with sales leadership to identify like, what are the signals within our organization? Like, signals is the right word, but it's like, what are the insights that correlate most closely with growth and velocity and win rates and all of those things? And how do we build programs around those? And again, it's all about the proximity to velocity and size. When we do this, we win this much more. When we focus on this and we have this many people in the deal, our win rate goes up 30%. It's like, what are those things? And then anchor programs around them. And so look, a rising tide lifts all boats. We know that. But it's like, I think what enablement can do now moving forward is, especially with AI, and you think about how AI can, one, ingest incomprehensible amounts of data like that, but then also allow you to generate programming off of those insights like that, right? And so I think enablement is, working with sales leadership to identify what are the areas that if we double down, if we bolstered this thing, we know that win rates would go up double digits within a single quarter. And so you build programs around that reinforce the best practices, the best learnings, and things like that. And so, your question about how do you partner with sales managers, like, well, one of the things is how do you build programs that take away coaching responsibilities in a good way from managers, right? Where it's like pipe hygiene. Everybody knows everybody knows the importance of pipe hygiene. Everybody knows the importance of account plans. We're going to build an agent so managers aren't chasing their salespeople to write account plans. We're going to build a program that positively reinforces elite pipe hygiene in a way where it's not coming down on people like, hey, clean up your pipe. It's like, hey, here's great. Look at this person. 85% of their pipeline is immaculate, is exactly the way we want it to be, and using agents to go and do that work for you. And so it's building programs there that identify where you're strong, where you're soft, and then like where you are soft, how do you deliver like the just-in-time enablement to help people raise that level?
How do you think about your own goals as an enablement function? Are you just tied to sales goals, like close rates go up, Justin successful, or more revenues coming in Justin successful? Or do you think, or are there other goals as you think about like your own AKRs as you communicate with your leadership? How do you think about that?
I don't know if you're familiar with this couple. It's a husband and wife. They're the Hormozis, Alex and
Hmm.
Layla
Yeah.
Hormozy, right? I consume as much Alex Hormozy content as I can, but
And that's a
the
lot
one
of content.
exactly. I have a long I spend 3 hours on a train every day, so I have a lot of time to listen to his podcasts. But he has this, he has this wisdom that he likes to impart, and where it's like, I'm trying to just distill it down for like a bite size here, but it's basically like understanding what to focus on is the hard thing. But if you can identify the most important things to focus on, executing on them is actually easy. It's like the strip, like like he has another line where it's like we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught, and it's like just focus on the things that matter. So I'm a big fan of aligning with my leaders on like this is exactly what good looks like, and it can change over time, but like we always have a scoreboard. And this is what we are focusing on. And so we know that at like a granular level here, we're very aligned on that with, leadership all the way on down. The rate at which we're growing, if you're not obsessing over your onboarding program, you ain't doing it right. Like that is, that is whistling past the graveyard, as a beloved former colleague of mine used to say. Like, again, like, look, nobody made VP of enablement by building a killer onboarding program, but like new paradigms require new paradigms. And if you're like, you got to think about it like this: as an enablement leader, go back to organizational calories. If your onboarding program is just okay, think about all the knowledge gaps that people come out of your onboarding program with. If organizational calories are perpetually at a premium in an AI native company, like, then any knowledge gaps that come out of onboarding are exponentially more painful than they were prior, right? So the first thing for me, like P0, is like, as we're hiring all these people, like they gotta ramp, they gotta ramp fast, and they gotta ramp right. And so that's why, again, I made the decision not to hire an onboarding specialist, because it's not one person's job, not Maggie's job. It's all of our jobs, and we will sink or swim by our ability to build a killer onboarding program, right? And then after that, it's just like, hey, like, when you're at a company that's feeling as much success as Legora is, it's like, how do you compress deal cycles? How do you distill insights? Like, how do you, like, again, we know if we win at this rate, given the amount of deals that we're in, it's like, one, how do we increase that number? But how do we reduce the amount of time that we spend in those deals? So it's really about, I'd say, like the core thesis is velocity, but it's like, how do we ramp people as quickly as possible into their roles here at Legora? And then like, how do we increase our deal cycle so that like we know that, we win at this clip when we get in front of the right customer. And so if we can reduce that sales cycle, we can get in front of more customers, we can increase that win rate.
Maybe one way we can end today's conversation is I'd be curious what advice you have for other people who want to get into enablement. Like, you've had a really successful career in enablement across a lot of different companies. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who's trying to break into it, and not even break into it, but then once you're in that role, like, how do you sort of keep this career velocity going?
Yeah, I smirked and just like, because the first question I ask in every interview I ever had is like, and again, if anyone's ever interviewed, anyone who's ever interviewed with me knows this question. It's like, there's no enablement degree. You literally cannot go to college for this. How did you get here? It's almost like,
So true.
like, tell me
There's
about
no
it.
sales degree, really, I feel like, even. Yeah.
No, exactly. But at the same time, it's like that's at least like a well, here. This is a funny anecdote. The first interview I ever had for enablement, like I was literally just doing like technology training at a global accounting firm, right? And I get a LinkedIn message from a recruiter at Twitch, and when I read the message, I'm like, this cannot be. Surely this is not like Twitch, and it was Twitch. In my first interview with my first manager in enablement, I was like, so enablement, I'm like, I've never heard of this. This must be new. And I remember just the look on his face. He's like, nope, not new. And I was like, but I got the job. Somehow I steadied and landed that job. But yeah, like no one. It's interesting. Like people that want to break into it, it's a good question, because again, I feel like people just find their way here. It finds you. Right? There's an Adam Grant line about strong opinions held loosely. And it's like strong opinions held loosely. It's like like I'll give you a real tangible example is when I was at Slack, um, the most successful the most success that I had at Slack was when they launched Slack Canvas, right? And Slack Canvas is amazing. It's actually really good. It's just criminally underutilized. And so when we launched Slack Canvas, what happened was this is the first tier one product. So I joined in, I think I joined in May or June, right? And so everything was preparing for Dreamforce, because the sun and the moon of Salesforce is Dreamforce, right? It anchors the entire calendar year. And then in Q4, they don't really launch much because they're closing business. They really like Dreamforce is their big bang. But what Slack decided to do is preview a ton of stuff for Dreamforce, and then they were launching the stuff coming into Q1. Now, what nobody could have predicted was that as they launched Slack Canvas, which again, like Benioff was on stage, like this is amazing, we're going to do all this stuff in Slack. You know, it was a really buzzy product that people were really excited to sell. Um, Slack's sales team was integrating into Salesforce's sales team, right? And so they had to integrate into their own personal instance of Salesforce, Salesforce's instance of Salesforce, right? And there was like, oh my God, there's like 16 hours of training just on using their Salesforce instance. And so Slack Canvas was set to come out during that month. And I remember going to our head of field enablement. I was like, okay, so we need a few hours of training to get people enabled on like Canvas, what it is, the use cases, that and the other. And he looked at me, he's like, Justin, he's like, ain't no way. I'll never forget. Zach BTAC. He goes, ain't no way, man. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, but this was my first tier one product release. And I was like, oh my God, like this is like my moment. Like I gotta show up. I gotta make a splash. And it was like, you can't get in front of the team this month. He's like, Justin, there's 16 hours of training. He's like, we can give you like maybe a spot here or a spot there. And I'm like, I'm done. I was like, oh my God, like this is bad. Like this is really bad. Right. And I went to them like months in advance, but Salesforce plans things 6 months. Their global enablement org at the time was 600 people. Right. So they're planning things 6 months in advance. And I'm just like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And it was like, hey, like it is what it is. Like, and it's also like, hey, like it's an intuitive product. They understand it. Like, let's go async. Like, let's release materials async with like videos and stuff like this. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't like that. Right. So long story short, I was not able to broker training time with the field. I was freaking out. And I was like, okay, well, you got to figure something out, right? Like you got to do something, right? Like there's a coaching tactic in hockey where it's like, just make them make a move, right? The easiest player to defend is someone who's not making moves. So just make a move, right? And so I was like, okay, well, what if we do this? What if we just build the most robust canvas? We'll make, I was like, it's an enablement hub, and it's all the things you need to know about Canvas are in a canvas, right? Like, oh, that's pretty novel. And I was like, okay, I like where this is going. And so I learned everything there was to know about Slack Canvas inside and out. And I built the first Slack enablement hub. And then what we found was we launched it, and the emoji rate on the launch message was not great. And so I was like, I think I'm heading towards a bread line. Like I think I'm out of luck here. But then when I went to the product team and I was like, is there any way to track like use? Because again, I was like, oh man, like again, like I'm kind of blind. And I went to the product team. I was like, hey, is there any way to track adoption of canvases like internally? Like, oh yeah, we have a dashboard. We'll give you access. Like, they were really, really nice people. And within the first month, that canvas had driven 400% more traffic than the high spot page that they had built. And so like, I mean, you want to talk about like, again, like it went from like, I wouldn't call it a Hail Mary, but it was like, it went from like, oh my goodness, like there's no time with the classic sales scenario, no time with the field. What do we do? You got to do something, make a move. And it was like so what the test data showed was that all the stuff in the canvas was linked to high spot. But the reason we got that number is that people were going straight from the canvas into high spot. They were no longer going to high spot. So we had this gap in the data where no one was going to the landing page in high spot, but they were still getting to the content. And that's because they were using the Slack canvas. And so that was like, whoa, like 400%. Like I remember I told my manager and she's like, if you're going to put 400% in front of a VP, that number better be real. Like this can't be like some cooked up thing. And so checked out the double, triple, quadruple check the data. It was real, ran it against other content. Like we did like an additional extension of the study. And again, like it was not only 400% more traffic, but 400% of users. We increased user traffic, like the unique users using the enablement content increased by 400% because Salesforce people started learning about it, right? And so what wound up happening was enablement canvases, because again, at that point in time, Salesforce was like big on like Salesforce on Salesforce, let's use our own products. They actually like, oh my God, they went so far as to say like, we could use this to replace all these systems. I was like, nope, please don't do that. It's not. Let's not do that. It's a good product. But what happened was I wound up training the entire 600-person global enablement org on Canvas, and then the entire 600-person org pivoted their whole like Slack canvases became the front door for all enablement at both Slack and Salesforce, right? And so it went from being like, oh my God, like this is not good for me, to like it was this really powerful unlock. It was the most successful thing that I did at my time there. And then like the cherry on top of this was, I took paternity leave in my time at Salesforce, right? My wife and I, we had a daughter, and a true story. I'm sitting there feeding my daughter, and I noticed like, oh, today's Dreamforce. Like, let's just see what's in the Slack keynote, right? So I put it on my laptop, cast it to my TV, literally feeding my daughter a bottle. She's like, a month and a half old at this point. And the chief product officer, Slack at the time, is going through his keynote, and it's all really good. Like I know the people that are putting, I can see the people, my friends that are like working the demo and stuff like that. And then he goes, and I'm really excited to show you guys this next feature. He goes, this is caught on like wildfire inside Slack and Salesforce. This is an enablement hub. And I'm sitting there. It was like that Leonardo DiCaprio gif, where he's on the couch like pointing and like snapping at the screen from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm feeding my 2-month-old daughter, and he's like, an enablement hub. It's this, it's that. He goes, and guys, like this is exploded adoption of enablement content inside the company. And I'm just like, I can't like it is, and again, this all came from this moment of like, hey, you can't actually get time. Like again, from you cannot get time with your field because they're too busy learning about Salesforce and instances of Salesforce to like being featured in the company keynote at Dreamforce. And then when Denise Dresser did her keynote at a Salesforce company kickoff a few months later, same thing. Again, I had no idea. I was just like watching the keynote from my home office, and like, boom, enablement hubs are there too. So it's just like I forget how we ended up here.
No,
Alex,
it's such an amazing story because I think it describes what enablement really is like, where you're navigating like the politics of getting time with the sales team, but then you had to like fight through that and stay scrappy as an enablement person. So it's a great way to end the conversation. And thank you so much for the time today, Justin.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I appreciate the walk down memory lane for that last story. But I did think you asked like for someone that wants to get into it. Like I'd say that enablement is for you if you're just a little bit too intimidated by the prospect of picking up a phone and calling a customer, but you love being part of a team. I think that's my favorite part about enablement is like sales teams they're a very unique thing, right? Because like it's a very rewarding job. It can be a very well-paying job, but like it's a hard job, right? And so like it bonds people in a very unique way. And so like the hook for me for enablement is like again, like if you're not the type, if you don't have the thickness of skin to go out and actually sell, well, if you're like an enablement person who becomes an asset, who becomes like a valued member of that team, like I mean, like listen, if the Super Bowl's this weekend, you might be the field goal kicker, but like a lot of times like the game comes down to like how the field goal kicker is going to kick that final point. So I think it's a unique job in that like you're not working directly with customers, but you're so embedded with the team that does work with customers. And it's like, I don't know, like I almost think like now it's like if for whatever reason like I had to go and find a different job, like I don't even know where I don't know where else I would find this type of camaraderie like you have. Again, on a sales floor, like we're in office 5 days a week, and I love it because it's like as our people close deals, as our new reps close their first deals, like they're going up and hitting the gong, and I'm like, I haven't seen this in like like 7
And you can
years.
live vicariously through the team. Like it's so fun. I mean, I think of it almost like a coach. I mean, I'm the same personality. I started my career in sales. I was like, not for me. I don't love closing the deals myself, but it's so fun to be a part of the team that's winning. And like, it must feel so good to like, you're the one kind of teeing it up for success for them.
Yeah, and again, like you got to find the right leaders. And again, I've had the best fortune in my career is like just I've managed to find incredible leaders. Like like right now we're like again, like Max is our CEO. Like I mean, like, there's only one Max Junistrand, like, ever in the world, right? And I'm lucky enough to spend time with him on a regular basis. And so whether it's him or, Pat Forcore, our CRO here, it's like if you find the right people to work for, everything you just said, Alex, it's like, it's so much more rewarding when again, like at kickoff last year, within like an hour of each other, both Pat and Max came up and like from the bottom of their hearts, like thanked me for kickoff. Me and the team, like this is great. Seriously, I can't believe how good this is. The feedback is also positive. Like, so you're part of the team, but at the same time, like there's when done well, there is such a gratitude for enablement. But it's a labor of love. It's like like I see how hard the salespeople work. I see how late they're here some nights. So it's like to see it all come together is like just indescribable.
Thanks for tuning in to Grow and Tell. If you enjoyed today's conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for weekly updates at growandtellshow.com. We'll see you next week. Thanks.